There's something quietly different about people who were teenagers in the 1980s. Not louder, not more dominant, just composed. They don't rush to fill silence. They don't search for constant reassurance. They seem comfortable in who they are, even when no one is watching. That didn't happen by chance. Growing up in the 80s didn't just leave you with memories, it shaped how your nervous system learned to handle the world. Once you notice it, you start seeing it everywhere. You grew up without constant oversight. No tracking, no instant replies, no one checking your location every few minutes. You left the house with a single expectation: be home when it gets dark. And somehow you figured it out. That kind of freedom wasn't just enjoyable, it quietly trained your mind early on. You learned something fundamental. Your life was your responsibility. You often came home to an empty place. You made your own food. You decided how to spend your time. No one rushed in to keep you entertained. And boredom wasn't treated like a problem that needed fixing. It was simply part of the day. You lay on the floor doing nothing in particular. You replayed the same music until every note felt familiar. You flipped through television channels, found nothing, and stayed anyway. Without realizing it, your brain developed a rare ability, the capacity to be with yourself without discomfort taking over. That's why people from that era can sit quietly, drive without constant sound, finish a meal without reaching for a screen. Their nervous system doesn't spike when stimulation fades. Now let's talk about social life, because this is where things truly separated generations. In the 80s, seeing friends required effort. You didn't message first, you went looking. You checked familiar places, the mall, the arcade, that one spot everyone somehow knew about. And when you found them, you had to read the moment fast. Who felt relaxed? Who was irritated? Who was close to starting something? Social awareness wasn't optional, it was learned face to face. No filters, no edits, no hiding behind a screen. If you said something careless, you saw the reaction immediately. If you crossed a line, you felt it right away. That's how real emotional awareness forms. Not from theory, from experience. You learned when to speak, when to stay quiet, how to sense tension without needing proof. And then there was dating. If you liked someone, you didn't send a message. You made a call. Sometimes a parent answered. Your pulse racing, palms damp, your voice shaky as you asked if they were home. That moment alone trained your system to face fear directly. You couldn't ghost. You couldn't block. You had to show up or disappear completely. That alone taught a kind of courage most people today never have to learn. You had to show up, knock on doors, sit under watchful eyes, exist in real time, without easy exits. There was no escape button, and when heartbreak arrived, real heartbreak, it stayed private. There was no posting, no checking, no refreshing for reassurance. You sat with it, alone in your room. Music turned up, certain the feeling would never pass. And then, slowly, it did. That's resilience, not avoiding pain, but learning that it doesn't destroy you. People who grew up in the 80s learned early that emotions move, they rise, they fall, they pass. And that understanding stays with you. Now let's talk about work, because most of you had a job early on. Not for development, not to build a profile. For money, actual money. If you wanted something, you worked for it. Concert tickets, gas, a new cassette or a Walkman. No one transferred funds to you. You created results yourself. That experience wired a belief many people struggle with today. When something goes wrong, you don't freeze. You look for solutions. That's why this generation handles pressure differently. They don't crumble, they adjust. And there's one more thing that rarely gets discussed. Privacy. You grew up saying awkward things that disappeared, making mistakes that faded, having phases that didn't follow you forever. You built your sense of self quietly, in your thoughts, in notebooks, in moments no one else saw. not for approval, not for attention. That's why so many people from that era seem grounded. They don't perform who they are, they already know. And when you compare that to today, constant exposure, constant judgment, constant noise, the contrast becomes clear. Teenagers of the 1980s weren't just lucky, they were conditioned to tolerate stillness, to face discomfort, to read people, to be alone, to wait, to recover. They didn't grow up faster, they grew deeper, and in a world that never stops moving, that conditioning has become something rare. Depth. If you were a teenager in the 80s, what moment taught you how to be comfortable on your own? Share it in the comments. Thank you for watching.